replenished with fuel and water, ice and the like, and was ready for sea. The time would be nominated, the skipper would nominate the time at which the ship would sail. And as a child, the one thing I remember above all of the things, when the Progressive sailed out of the harbour and into the harbour, the whole of the bottom end of Scarborough, the whole of the fishing community were awoken or aroused by this infernal blowing of a bugle by Mr. Oakes, who was sat over here to the right. It used to echo right the way across the old town, and it was humoured by many, but infuriated others. But it was always like he always knew when the Progressive were coming in or out of the harbour. And as Richard will explain later, they had a great rival. The Progressive had a great rival. It was also a fighter ship by the name of the Brilliant Star, and which was skippered by Jack Watkinson. But Richard is now going to take up the story from the actual throwing off of the ropes at the harbour, and then going away to sea with him with his bugle.
Right, the first thing we used to do then was shout up to Pierman to let go of ropes. Then he used to let go, and as we were turning round to come out of harbour, we used to give him a blast on the bugle to let all lads know that we were going. And then when we got to pier end, Billy Bono, he used to stream log away. That was to tell you how far you'd run off. And then we used to steam off then, all depends how far we were working. We dodge off at half speed, so we got to where we wanted to be round about dusk, 7:30, 8 o'clock at night. As dusk was coming down then, that's when we used to call out, all lads on deck, and then we'd shoot our herring nets. We'd get the herring nets shot overboard, get a small head to wind, and then get mizzen set. And then whoever's watch it was, they were in control of the ship then while we all got turned in. We get shot for about 8 o'clock, and we'd be rolled in while about midnight. Then whoever was on watch would call out, and you'd go and have what you call a look on. We'd all fuss net up and see if we were getting a check in a bait of herrings, like for bait. If we were getting plenty, we kept them coming, got them all hauled aboard, and then we'd see how many boxes of herrings there was, whether they wanted cutting in half or whether they were small enough to put one herring on a hook. If we were on ground, we were ready for shooting lines then, and then we got ready for it line.
The herring
round the top of the basket for them to walk in.
And now was the half dead and dying fish. It was always the fit and the top quality fish that was caught. And once it was caught, it was the manner in which it was then processed to be in marketing. And Richard will explain about how the fish was cleaned, put down below, shelled, iced and presented. So again, over to Richard, please.
Right, as George said, the quality of the fish was 100% what you caught on lines. As he said about small fish, if we got any small fish, we unhooked them and threw them back overboard, still alive, so we wasn't killing unnecessary. Regards as grades of fish, I mean, what we used to call a slink, if we got one of these up, which was a cod maybe deformed or a cancer, some form of cancer on them, we used to put the gog stick in them and shake them off overboard and let them go. The art of keeping fish was getting it off the deck as quick as possible onto ice. Where we had, if we were getting a heavy load of fish, we would neglect caving the lines and get extra men forward to get the fish gutted, washed, down below and iced, because that was most essential, getting it on the ice as quick as possible. And that was the art of the game. If you didn't get it off the deck, as you do realise it was July and August, the skipper would open the galley door and shout, "It's coking forward," as much to give you a gentle hint to knock off caving your lines and get yourselves forward and get on with the job.
So, as Richard said, that the fish was gutted, and there's one thing that if I may, Richard, just add that Bob told me that in the gutting process, that unlike in latter days in the trawling, they were so precise with the gutting that the knife was put in the navel and it was drawn up to the throat, but the gill was never opened, and that was to present the fish properly on the fish market, so that the fish could be seen to be clean. And in the fish room, it was just a layer of shelf after, I think there were 10 shelves in the fish room. And well, I'll let Richard himself describe just how the fish was iced and which species went at what level.
Once you got the fish off deck down below to the man in the fish room, which was Matt, his job then was icing the fish away. Now the bottom of the shelves, as Georgie told you, they were called the underfoots. In there you put all your rough type fish for a start, a layer of ling and what have you. And then your next shelf, you laid your cods in, tail and head opposite ways, and the ice was put just on the heads and the tails and not on the bodies. Then the next shelf went in, which was just to say clearing the fish on the lower shelf. And you carried on all the way up the pound like that till you got to the top shelf, and then you put your rangum in again, your lings and whatever. That was so the heat that got on the deck didn't get through onto your good fish, and you kept them cool. And that's how you iced it all the way through. And even at the end of the trip going in, especially if you were in the harbour over the weekend, us being at Scarborough, they used to tell us to run the tarpaulin over the crampole to keep the sun off the deck and, wet it. And that's how we kept the fish 100%. And the fish room man, well, it was an art. He used to come up once the fish was laid out, and people would remark how good your fish looked. If you got bad reports off buys about your fish not looking up to scratch, then the book come back on all concerned about.
And so Richard, did it explain how the fish was processed from being caught into a marketable condition and put in the fish room ready for landing? That process had taken them 24 hours. And during the next 24 hours with this session, I mentioned that we started up in the early part of April up on Souter Bank, up off Sunderland, and the fishery there was predominantly blue skate, is that correct?
50-50, the big skate.
Big skate.
2.5 stone that way.
And cod.
And sprag, young
sprag.
Good sprag fish there. Nearly all April month, providing the herrings stopped there. But once the herrings moved, that was you finished.
And did you follow the herring?
No, we had to find them again then. But we always worked up further towards Castle and worked Bayman's Hole, as Bob was saying.
And did you follow the herring down towards the dowsing at all?
No.
You stopped at the head end or?
The head end was about far south as we went with baskets.
Can I just say that and behind Scarborough there,
we were working it, we got a good proportion of skate, which would average out maybe 300 stone for the 2 days trip, and 70 kit of green. But later on in the season, when it got to August, possibly into the first week of September, we moved up to the south part of the Hull, which was round about Raincliffe Scope, and fish for skate. Well, there we've had up to 900 stone of skate per day. And one particular trip we had nearly 1800 stone of blue skate, and the other 3 ships that was with us had touched skate. So we decided to go to Grimsby to land it, to try and keep the market stable. Anyway, we landed this shot at Grimsby, and we finished up at 10 shillings a stone, which was same as Scarborough's prices. But on the other hand, if we'd come to Scarborough and put this extra 2,000 on the market, we don't know what we'd have got for it. But as the fishing went on, the skate gradually disappeared altogether. But we have seen times when we've had that so much skate, we've lost 8 and 10 baskets just with sheer weight of fish. And the tides have been stronger than what we anticipated and just lost them. But once you lost lines with skate on the ground It purifies the ground, and that's more or less the end of the fishing for it.
Are you,
So long until it would starve, wouldn't it? If it all on the line, all hooked on the line.
The blue skate became almost extinct.
so you,
I would say 50 or 60 kids. But you didn't say kids, then it was stones.
yes, so you'd land 600 stone
Five, 600 stone.
twice a week.
Yeah, that was what it is.
But it was all primes. It was all prime. There was not a great deal of offal about it. So
Possibly 400 stone of turbot thrown in, because we used to catch turbot offside before it worked inside. You see, we used to catch maybe 10 or 12 score turbots over the 2 days. Well, over the week they added up, didn't they?
And so when you're fishing,
They used to have to regulate it, didn't they? They used to have to sell the trawler first, then a line boat, and then the trawler went steamboats with the emulator and them. You couldn't just take your turn and go right away through. They used to regulate them.
oh, I see. So that you did the toilet facility with some of the injuries that you'd seen your skipper suffer.
The personal hygiene aboard the ship, regards as washing, was governed by one thing. You couldn't carry enough water to be washing and shaving and all that every day. So what we used to do for our own personal hygiene, we used to have a milk churn that was aft, and we used to fill that full of fresh water, and we'd use that for cleaning our teeth, such as that on the night time. But regards as washing, Scarborough crew never got washed at all. Filey lads, when we were steaming back to land after the second day, they all used to come down and get washed and shaved, and that was their privilege. We'd get washed and shaved when we went home. So that's how we had to save water, because you didn't carry much fresh water, you only had a small tank. And your meal times was governed by what time you got your lines hauled. If you got your lines hauled at 3 o'clock, you had your dinner at 3:30. If you had your lines hauled with breaks, as Bob was telling you, which could delay you 5 or 6 hours some days, you were having your dinner at 8 o'clock at night. So that was it. Same as your breakfast. Your breakfast, you could be having that at 2:30 in the morning.
Can I just say, yeah.
As George was telling you, when we were shooting lines, we were going at a cracking pace. And as George said, the man that was stood aft, which was the skipper, if anything flew out of the basket, he copped it. And I've seen him with hooks in his hand and side of his face, where we've had to take him into galley and sharpen our best knife up and cut him out. Otherwise, we were always frightened of blood poisoning setting in, because if you got a rusty hook, it could cause blood poisoning. But as luck would have it, we never had no such casualties as that. But if you got the hook in the wrong place, well, it was a bad job then. If you got it in back of your hand, which, among all your girders and that, a lot of the old Filey fishermen that were in the drifters, when they were working places like Fisherbank, which was 36 hours steam from Scarborough, and they didn't get the fingers, the hook out of the fingers, you'd see a lot of them with the fingers laid back where the girders had, been badly damaged.
But you didn't. Fortunately, you didn't.
No, we
you didn't have any injuries like that.
We never had nothing like that.
Yeah. Well.